The smell of whiskey and desperation clung to Helena Grant like a second skin, and she wondered if she would ever be able to wash it away, even if she scrubbed for 1,000 years in the clearest mountain stream she could find. She stood behind the bar of the Lucky Dollar Saloon in Grass Valley, California, pouring drinks for men who looked through her rather than at her, their eyes seeing only what they wanted to see, not who she truly was beneath the rouge and the forced smile. It was 1876, and the gold rush might have slowed to a trickle, but men still came to this mountain town hoping to strike it rich, and when they did not, they drowned their sorrows in cheap liquor and cheaper company. Helena was 22 years old, though some days she felt ancient, worn down by the weight of expectations and the reality of her circumstances. She had arrived in Grass Valley 3 years ago with her aunt, fleeing a terrible situation back in Missouri, where her father had died and left them with nothing but debts, and the unwanted attention of creditors who thought payment could come in forms other than money. Her Aunt Margaret had known a woman who ran a boarding house in California, or so she had said, but when they arrived, that woman had been dead 2 years, and the building had been converted into the Lucky Dollar Saloon. With no money to go anywhere else and winter coming on hard, they had taken the only work available. Her aunt had died the previous spring of pneumonia, leaving Helena alone in a world that offered few choices to women without family or fortune. She could continue working at the saloon. She could try to find work as a laundress or seamstress for even less pay. Or she could accept one of the many proposals she received from men who wanted to own her rather than love her. None of these options felt like living, only different forms of slow dying. Tonight was like most nights, loud and chaotic, full of men playing cards and arguing over claims and telling lies about their past glories. Helena moved through the crowd with a practiced grace, delivering drinks and deflecting wandering hands with a skill born of necessity. The owner of the Lucky Dollar, a man named Silas Porter, watched from his corner table, counting money and making sure his girls earned their keep. He was not a cruel man by the standards of such men, but he was not kind either, viewing Helena and the other women who worked for him as assets to be managed rather than people to be cared for. She was refilling glasses at a corner table when the doors swung open, and a man walked in who somehow seemed different from the usual crowd. He was tall and lean, with the weathered look of someone who spent his days under the open sky rather than underground in the mines. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair and eyes that took in the room with a quiet assessment. He moved to the bar and waited patiently, not shouting or demanding attention like so many others did. Helena approached him with her professional smile in place. "What can I get for you?" "Just a beer, please," he said, and his voice was softer than she expected, with a hint of Texas in the vowels. "Been a long day." She poured the beer and slid it across to him. He paid with exact change, which was notable in itself, as most men tried to shortchange the girls or complained about the prices. He took a long drink and then set the glass down carefully. "Thank you, miss," he said, meeting her eyes directly. It startled her, that direct gaze, because it felt like he was actually seeing her, not just the painted face and low-cut dress that the job required. "You are welcome," she said, suddenly unsure of herself in a way she had not been in a long time. He did not say anything else, just nursed his beer and watched the room. Helena went back to her other duties, but she found her gaze drifting back to him throughout the evening. He did not play cards, did not start any fights, did not bother any of the girls. He just sat and drank his single beer slowly, looking like a man with something heavy on his mind. Later, when the crowd had thinned slightly, he gestured her over again. Could I get another beer, please? And what is your name, if you do not mind my asking? Helena, she said, pouring the second beer. Helena Grant. That is a pretty name. I am Thomas Ashford. Most people call me Tom. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. You do not seem happy here, if you do not mind me saying so. The observation was so unexpected and so accurate that Helena felt something crack in the careful armor she wore. Is anyone truly happy in a place like this? I suppose not, Tom said quietly. But some folks seem more resigned to it than others. You look like you are waiting for something different. Waiting does not change anything, Helena said, more bitterly than she intended. Forgive me, it has been a long night. Nothing to forgive. I understand about long nights and longer days. He took another drink. I've got a ranch about 10 miles from here. Small operation, just me and a couple of hands, cattle mostly, some horses. It is honest work, hard work, but it is mine. Helena was not sure why he was telling her this, but something in his tone made her listen. That sounds nice. To have something that is yours, I mean. It is, Tom agreed. Took me 8 years to save enough to buy the land and get started. I worked as a trail hand, a ranch hand, did whatever jobs I could find. Never wanted to go into the mines like most folks around here. I like seeing the sky. There was a crash from the other side of the room as a card game turned into an argument. Helena excused herself to help manage the situation, which involved getting Silas to separate two miners before they could do real damage to each other or the furniture. By the time she returned to the bar, Tom had finished his beer and left money for both drinks plus a generous tip. He came back the next night, and the night after that. Each time he ordered 1 or 2 beers, spoke to Helena when she had time, and left without causing any trouble. On the 4th night, during a brief quiet moment, he said something that would change everything. I have been thinking, Tom said, his fingers tracing patterns in the condensation on his glass, about what you said about waiting not changing anything. You are right about that. Change requires action, not waiting. That is true, Helena said carefully, wondering where this was going. I am not a rich man, Helena, but I am a decent one. At least I try to be, and I think you deserve better than this. He gestured around the saloon. I know we have not known each other long, and maybe I have got no right to say this, but I cannot shake the feeling that I am supposed to help you if you will let me. Helena felt her heart begin to pound. Help me how? Tom took a deep breath. I need someone at the ranch. Someone who can help with the cooking and the household management. It is not easy work, and it is isolated out there, but it is respectable work. You would have your own room, proper wages, and nobody would treat you as anything less than a lady. If you wanted it, the job is yours. For a long moment, Helena could not speak. Offers from men always came with hidden prices, expectations that were never stated outright but always collected on eventually. Why would you do this for someone you barely know? Because somebody did something similar for me once, Tom said simply. When I was 16, I ran away from a bad situation in Texas. A rancher named John Davis found me half-starved and gave me work, taught me everything about ranching, treated me like I mattered. He died 5 years ago, and before he did, he told me to pass on the kindness when I could. Maybe this is that time. And you would expect nothing from me? No, other duties. Helena had to ask, had to be clear. Tom's expression was earnest. I would expect honest work and honest dealing, nothing more. You would be an employee, Helena, with all the respect that deserves. I give you my word on that. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was, but something in Tom's face made Helena want to believe. I would need to give Silas notice. He will not like losing one of his girls. How much does he pay you? Helena named the pitiful sum, and Tom nodded. I will pay you twice that, plus room and board. And I will deal with Silas if he gives you trouble. When can you start? I need 3 days to settle my affairs. Helena was already thinking through what little she owned, what she would need to take with her. 3 days then. I will come by with a wagon on Sunday morning. Be ready at dawn if you are serious about this. After Tom left that night, Helena sat in her tiny room above the saloon and tried to think clearly. This could be a terrible mistake. She knew nothing about this man beyond a few conversations over beer. He could be lying about everything. The ranch might not even exist. But something in her gut told her that Tom Ashford was exactly who he appeared to be, and this was the chance she had been waiting for, even if she had not known she was waiting for it. The next day she told Silas she was leaving. As expected, he was not pleased. You have got some cowboy filling your head with romantic notions, is that it? He will use you up and toss you aside, Helena, and then where will you be? At least here you have steady work. Steady work, Helena repeated, thinking of the groping hands and the leering faces and the smell of whiskey that never quite washed out of her hair. Thank you for the opportunity, Silas, truly, but I am taking this chance. Silas tried to argue further, even suggested he might not let her go, but Helena stood firm. She had been saving every penny she could for 3 years, and while it was not much, it was enough to survive on for a few weeks if Tom's offer fell through. She was done waiting for her life to change. She was going to change it herself. Sunday morning arrived cold and clear, the September air carrying the first hints of the coming autumn. Helena stood outside the saloon with her single battered trunk, everything she owned in the world packed inside it. She wore her best dress, which was not saying much, and had scrubbed her face clean of the rouge and powder that the job required. For the first time in 3 years, she looked like herself. Tom arrived exactly at dawn, driving a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 strong horses. He jumped down and tipped his hat to her. "Morning, Helena. You ready for this?" "As ready as I will ever be," she said, surprised by how calm she felt. He loaded her trunk easily into the wagon bed and then helped her up onto the seat. The touch of his hand was brief and respectful, and Helena felt some of her lingering fears ease. They rode out of Grass Valley as the town was beginning to wake, heading into the rolling hills that surrounded the mining town. The ranch was everything Tom had described and nothing Helena had expected. It sat in a beautiful valley with a creek running through it, the ranch house small but well built, with a barn and several outbuildings in good repair. The land rolled away in gentle slopes, dotted with cattle and horses. It was peaceful in a way that made Helena's chest ache with something she could not quite name. "It is not much," Tom said, watching her face, "but it is home." "It is beautiful," Helena said honestly, "truly beautiful." Tom showed her around the property, introducing her to his 2 ranch hands, Miguel and David, who lived in the bunkhouse and clearly respected their boss. The ranch house itself was simple, 3 bedrooms, a main room, and a kitchen. Tom showed her to one of the bedrooms, small but clean, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the valley. "This is yours," he said. "There is a lock on the door if you want it." Miguel's wife Maria used to help with the house, but she passed last winter, and we have been managing poorly on our own since then. I will be honest, we are not much for cooking or cleaning. Helena set her trunk down and looked around the room. It was the first space that had been truly hers since leaving Missouri. "It is perfect, thank you, Tom." "No need for thanks. You will earn your keep, I promise you that. Running a ranch house is hard work." He paused in the doorway. "I usually eat breakfast at sunrise, dinner at noon, and supper at sunset. Miguel and David eat with us for the main meals. The pantry is stocked with basics, and there is money for supplies when you need them. I trust you to manage the household as you see fit." Over the following days, Helena threw herself into her new role with an energy born of relief and gratitude. The house had been neglected but not mistreated, and she set about making it into a proper home. She cooked meals that the men praised lavishly, probably because they had been living on beans and tough beef for months. She cleaned and organized and even started a small vegetable garden near the house. Tom was unfailingly polite and respectful, always thanking her for meals, asking if she needed anything, treating her exactly as he had promised, as an employee and a lady. He worked long hours on the ranch, often coming in exhausted and dusty, but he always had a kind word and a genuine smile for her. Slowly, over weeks and then months, Helena began to feel something she had not felt in years. She felt safe. She felt valued. And increasingly, she felt something else when she looked at Tom, something warm and complicated that she was not quite ready to name. Tom felt it too, though he tried to hide it. He had offered Helena this job out of genuine desire to help her, with no ulterior motives, but he had not counted on finding himself drawn to her in ways that went beyond simple attraction. She was intelligent and resourceful, with a quiet strength that showed in everything she did. She had a laugh that she rarely let out, but when she did, it lit up her whole face. She was gentle with the animals and patient with Miguel's broken English, and somehow made the ranch house feel like a home in ways it never had before. But Tom had given his word that he would not pursue anything beyond an employer-employee relationship, and he intended to keep that word, even if it was becoming increasingly difficult. The first real test came in late October when an early snowstorm blew through, trapping them all at the ranch for 3 days. Miguel and David stayed in the bunkhouse, keeping the animals fed and safe, while Tom and Helena were mostly confined to the ranch house. They spent hours talking by the fire, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future, their views on everything from politics to poetry. "I used to read all the time," Helena confessed on the second day, as they sat with coffee and watched the snow fall. "My mother taught me before she died when I was 10. We had a whole shelf of books and I loved every one of them. Had to sell them all when my father died and the debts came due." "There are some books here," Tom said, gesturing to a small shelf in the corner. "Not many, but you are welcome to them. And next time I go into town, you can pick out whatever you would like from the general store. They usually have a few books in stock." "You do not have to do that," Helena said automatically, still not quite used to the idea that kindness could come without strings attached. "I want to," Tom said simply. "You should have things that make you happy, Helena. You have been without them too long." It was such a simple statement, but it hit Helena with unexpected force. When was the last time anyone had cared about her happiness? She felt tears spring to her eyes and turned away quickly, not wanting Tom to see. But he did see, and he moved closer, though still maintaining a respectful distance. "Did I say something wrong?" "No," Helena said, her voice thick. "You said something very right, and I am not used to that." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the wind howling outside. Finally, Tom spoke. "You deserve good things, Helena. I hope you know that. Whatever happened to you before, whatever you had to do to survive, it does not define you. You are a good person." "I see that every day." Helena looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw in his eyes something that made her heart race. It was not just respect or friendship. It was something deeper, something that mirrored the feelings she had been trying to ignore in herself. "Tom," she said softly, "why did you really offer me this job?" He was quiet for a long moment. "At first it was just like I said, paying forward a kindness, but I would be lying if I said that was all it was." From the first moment I saw you in that saloon, you looked so out of place there, like a wildflower growing in a coal mine. I could not stop thinking about you, could not shake the feeling that I needed to help you get out of there. And then when you came here, when I got to know you, I realized that I did not just want to help you. I wanted you in my life. But I gave you my word that this was just a job, and I will keep that word, Helena. I will not pressure you or expect anything from you beyond the work we agreed on. Helena felt something loosen in her chest, some fear she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. What if I want more than just a job? Tom's eyes widened slightly. You would have to be very sure about that. I would never want you to feel obligated or think you owed me anything. Your job here is secure regardless of anything else, I promise you that. I am sure, Helena said, and as she said it, she realized it was true. I have been sure for weeks now, but I was afraid to say anything. You are the first truly good man I have met in longer than I can remember, Tom. You make me feel safe and valued and seen. I want to know what could happen between us if you want that too. I want that, Tom said, his voice rough with emotion. I want that more than I can say. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took her hand. His hand was rough from years of hard work, but his touch was gentle. Helena felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the fire. They took things slowly, both of them cautious in their own ways. Tom because he did not want to rush Helena or make her uncomfortable, and Helena because she was still learning to trust that this was real, that Tom's feelings were genuine, and not just a more sophisticated form of the manipulation she had experienced before. Their courtship unfolded over the winter months, quiet and sweet. Tom would bring her wildflowers when he found them, even in the snow. Helena would leave his favorite foods at meals and mend his clothes without being asked. They would sit by the fire in the evenings, reading aloud to each other from the growing collection of books Tom kept buying. They would take walks around the property on clear days, talking about everything and nothing. Their first kiss happened on Christmas Eve. Helena had spent the day preparing a special meal, and Tom had surprised her with a beautiful shawl he had ordered from San Francisco, deep blue with delicate embroidery. She had given him a new hat she had bought in town, and a scarf she had knitted herself in secret. They were standing by the Christmas tree, just a small pine Tom had cut and brought in, decorated with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments Helena had made. The moment felt perfect, suspended in time, and when Tom leaned down and kissed her softly, Helena felt like she had finally come home. "I love you," Tom whispered against her lips. "I know it might be too soon to say that, but it is the truth. I love you, Helena Grant, and I want to spend my life making you happy if you will let me." "I love you too," Helena said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I did not think I could feel this way about anyone, but you changed everything." They spent the winter growing closer, learning each other in ways both simple and profound. Tom learned that Helena sang when she thought no one was listening, old songs her mother had taught her. Helena learned that Tom had a surprisingly gentle hand with injured animals and a deep love of the land that bordered on spiritual. They learned to work together, to anticipate each other's needs, to find joy in the simple rhythms of ranch life. In March, Tom asked her to marry him. There was no dramatic proposal, no grand gesture. They were working in the garden together, planting seeds for the spring vegetables, and Tom just stopped and looked at her. "Marry me, Helena. Make this official. I want you to be my wife, my partner in everything. I want to build a life with you, a real life." Helena's hands were covered in soil, her dress was old and patched, and she had never felt more beautiful or more loved. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They were married in Grass Valley on a beautiful April morning in 1877, with Miguel and David and a few of the townspeople in attendance. Helena wore a simple white dress that Tom had bought for her, and she carried wildflowers from the ranch. The ceremony was brief, conducted by a traveling preacher who came through once a month, but the vows they spoke to each other were heartfelt and sincere. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Tom kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world, and Helena felt tears of happiness stream down her face. She had gone from a saloon girl with no future to a rancher's wife with everything to look forward to. The first year of their marriage was full of adjustments and discoveries. Helena had never run a household as a true partner before, and Tom had never shared his life so completely with another person. They argued sometimes about small things mostly, but they learned to communicate, to compromise, to put each other first. The ranch prospered under their joint care. Helena's careful management of the household finances and supplies meant they saved money and reduced waste. Tom's hard work and skill with the cattle meant the herd grew steadily. They added more chickens and started raising pigs, creating multiple income streams. By the end of that first year, they were doing better financially than Tom had ever done on his own. But more than the material success, they were happy. Tom would come in from a long day of work and find Helena in the kitchen, and his face would light up like she was the best thing he had ever seen. Helena would wake up next to her husband and feel overwhelmed with gratitude that this was her life now, that she was safe and loved and valued. In the spring of 1878, Helena discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had waited to be sure before telling Tom. When she finally did, over breakfast on a sunny May morning, he stared at her in stunned silence for a long moment before a huge grin spread across his face. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." He came around the table and pulled her into his arms, careful despite his excitement. "Helena, this is the best news, the very best news." "You are happy then?" Helena asked, though his reaction made the question unnecessary. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. We are going to be parents. You are going to be a mother." He kissed her thoroughly. "When?" "November, I think. Maybe late October." Tom immediately began planning, talking about converting one of the spare rooms into a nursery, about hiring more help so Helena would not have to work so hard, about all the things they would need. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Helena found herself getting excited too, though she was also nervous about the birth and about being a mother. The pregnancy progressed well, though Helena was sick in the mornings for the first few months. Tom was attentive and caring, taking on more of the household tasks when she was tired, bringing her tea and crackers when she felt ill, reading to her in the evenings. Miguel's daughter Rosa came to help around the house a few days a week, giving Helena time to rest. They spent those months preparing for the baby and deepening their own relationship. Tom would talk to Helena's growing belly, telling their child about the ranch and the horses and how loved they already were. Helena would knit tiny clothes and imagine what their baby would look like, whether they would have Tom's dark hair or her lighter brown, his brown eyes or her green ones. On a cold November night in 1878, with snow falling outside and a fire roaring in the hearth, Helena went into labor. Tom sent David racing to town for the doctor while he stayed with Helena, holding her hand and trying to be strong for her, even though he was terrified. The doctor arrived just in time, and after several hours of difficult labor, Helena gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Tom cried when he held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the tiny person they had created. "He is perfect. Helena, he is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Helena asked, exhausted but happy, watching her husband cradle their son with infinite gentleness. "I was thinking, Henry, after your father, if that sits right with you." Henry Thomas Ashford. Helena felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. Her father had not been a perfect man, but he had loved her and done his best before illness and debt had destroyed him. "Henry is perfect, our little Henry." The first year with Henry was challenging in ways they had not anticipated. The baby was colicky and did not sleep well, leaving both Tom and Helena exhausted. But he was also a joy, hitting milestones that filled them with pride and delight. His first smile, his first laugh, the first time he reached for Tom and said something that sounded almost like, "Papa." They fell into new rhythms as a family. Tom would take Henry out to see the animals in the mornings, carrying him in a sling Helena had made. Helena would sing to him while she worked, the old songs her mother had taught her. They would sit together in the evenings, Helena nursing Henry while Tom read aloud, creating a peaceful domestic scene that neither of them had ever imagined they would have. As Henry grew from baby to toddler, the ranch continued to grow too. They added more land, purchased from a neighbor who was retiring. Tom hired another hand, a young man named Jack, to help with the increased workload. Helena started selling her preserves and baked goods in town, earning extra money and building a reputation as an excellent cook. But more than the material success, what mattered was the love that filled their home. Tom was a devoted father, patient and playful with Henry. Helena bloomed as a mother, finding joy in watching her son discover the world. And their love for each other only deepened, strengthened by the challenges they faced together and the life they were building. In 1881, when Henry was 2.5, Helena became pregnant again. This time she was less nervous, having been through it before, though Tom was just as protective and attentive as he had been the first time. Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Margaret after Tom's mother and Helena's aunt, was born in the summer of 1882. She was an easier baby than Henry had been, calm and content, with Tom's dark hair and Helena's green eyes. Watching Tom with their daughter was a revelation for Helena. He was so gentle with Sarah, singing to her in his rough voice, letting her sleep on his chest while he sat in his chair by the fire. Henry, now a rambunctious 3-year-old, was initially suspicious of this new person who took up his parents' attention, but he quickly became a protective older brother, always wanting to help with the baby. The years rolled on, full of the ordinary moments that make up a life. First days of school for Henry, then Sarah. Christmases and birthdays celebrated with increasing elaboration as the children grew, teaching Henry to ride, watching Sarah learn to help in the garden, summer days by the creek, winter nights by the fire. Arguments and reconciliations, challenges and triumphs, all the fabric of a family life. Tom and Helena's love remained constant through it all, the foundation everything else was built on. They still had their evenings together after the children were asleep, talking and reading and simply being together. They still found moments to steal kisses in the barn or hold hands under the dinner table. The passion between them had matured into something deeper and more enduring, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. In 1885, when Helena was 31 and Tom was 33, they took stock of their lives and marveled at how far they had come. The ranch was prosperous and well established. Their children were healthy and happy. They had built something real and lasting, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "You ever think about the lucky dollar?" Tom asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Sometimes," Helena admitted, "but it feels like it happened to someone else in another life. That scared girl in the saloon, I barely recognize her anymore. She was brave, Tom said. She took a chance on a stranger, trusted that things could be better. That took courage. You made me brave, Helena said, leaning against his shoulder. You believed I deserved better, and that made me believe it too. You always deserved better, I just helped you see it. He kissed the top of her head. You have made me happier than I ever dreamed possible, Helena. This life we have built together, it is everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know to want. I love you, Helena said simply. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the day fade into night, the sounds of the ranch settling around them. Inside, they could hear the children playing some game that involved a lot of giggling. In the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. It was the music of their life, and it was beautiful. As the years continued to pass, Tom and Helena watched their children grow into young adults with pride and occasional trepidation. Henry showed an aptitude for ranching, learning everything Tom could teach him and adding his own innovations. Sarah was more interested in books and learning, and they eventually sent her to a school in Sacramento, though she always came home for holidays and summers. The ranch became known throughout Nevada County as one of the best-run operations, and the Ashford name became synonymous with quality and integrity. Tom served on various community boards, helping to improve conditions for other ranchers. Helena became involved in establishing a school in their area, using her own difficult path to education to argue for better opportunities for all children. They faced challenges, of course. A drought in 1888 that tested all their resources and ingenuity. A difficult winter in 1890 that killed some of their herd. Health scares and financial worries, and all the normal troubles that beset people trying to make a life from the land. But they faced everything together, their partnership stronger than any individual hardship. In 1895, when Tom was 43 and Helena was 41, they became grandparents for the first time. Henry had married a woman named Catherine from a neighboring ranch, and they presented Tom and Helena with a granddaughter named Emma. Holding that tiny baby, Helena felt the circle of life complete itself in a profound way. She had gone from having nothing to having everything that mattered. Hard to believe sometimes, is it not? Tom said as they rocked little Emma together in the nursery they had set up in the ranch house. That saloon girl and that lonely rancher ended up with all this. We were never just a saloon girl and a rancher, Helena said. We were two people who needed each other and were brave enough to take a chance on love. Best chance I ever took, Tom said, kissing her cheek. As the new century approached, Tom and Helena began to slow down slightly, letting Henry take over more of the day-to-day ranch operations while they focused on the parts they enjoyed most. Tom still rode out every day, unable to imagine a life where he did not spend time with the land and animals he loved. Helena still managed the household, though now she had help from Catherine and occasional visits from Sarah, who had become a teacher but still loved the ranch. They spent more time with their grandchildren as that number grew. Emma was joined by a brother, then Henry and Catherine had 2 more children. Sarah eventually married a lawyer from Sacramento and had 3 children of her own, bringing them to visit the ranch regularly. The house that had once been a bachelor's lonely dwelling became filled with the laughter and chaos of a large, loving family. Tom and Helena would sit on their porch in the evenings, as they had done for decades, and watch the sun set over their land. Their hands were more wrinkled now, their hair gray, but the love between them was as strong as it had been that snowy winter when they first confessed their feelings. No regrets, Tom asked one evening when they were both in their early 50s. Not a single one, Helena said. Except maybe that we did not find each other sooner. We found each other when we were meant to, Tom said wisely. Everything that came before was just the path that led us to each other. They watched their grandchildren play in the yard, Henry and Catherine working together to bring in the horses for the night, the mountains turning purple in the fading light. This was their legacy, not just the land and the buildings and the cattle, but the love they had built and the family that had sprung from it. As Tom and Helena entered their 60s, they had the satisfaction of seeing everything they had worked for flourish. The ranch was in good hands with Henry, who had become an even better rancher than Tom, combining his father's work ethic with modern innovations. Sarah's children were all doing well in their various pursuits, and several of them had expressed interest in eventually returning to the ranch. But more than any material success, what gave Tom and Helena the most joy was the knowledge that they had created something good and lasting. They had taken two broken people and built a whole life together. They had loved each other through everything life threw at them and had come out stronger on the other side. In 1910, when Tom was 58 and Helena was 56, they celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary with a big party that brought together family from all over California. Their children and grandchildren filled the ranch house and overflowed into the yard. There was music and dancing and so much food that the tables groaned under the weight of it all. Tom made a speech, standing up and quieting the crowd. 33 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever met. She was working in a saloon in Grass Valley, and I was a rancher who thought he was content being alone. But the moment I saw her, I knew my life was about to change. Helena, you have given me more than I ever deserved. You have made me a better man, a better father, a better human being. You have filled my life with love and laughter and purpose. Every single day with you has been a gift, and I thank God for every one of them. Helena stood up beside him, tears streaming down her face. Tom Ashford, you saved my life in more ways than you know. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You gave me a home and a family and a life I could have never imagined. You are the best man I have ever known, and loving you has been the greatest joy and privilege of my life. They kissed to the cheers and applause of their family, and Helena thought about that scared girl in the Lucky Dollar Saloon, pouring drinks and dreaming of escape. If she could tell that girl what the future held, she would never believe it. But it was all real, every beautiful moment of it. The years continued their steady march. Tom and Helena grew older, moving more slowly but still active, still engaged with the ranch and their family. They took a trip to San Francisco in 1912, their first real vacation in all their years together, and marveled at how much the world had changed. But they were happy to return to their ranch, to the life they had built together. In 1915, tragedy struck when Catherine died in childbirth, delivering her sixth child. The loss devastated Henry, and Tom and Helena moved back into the main ranch house to help him care for the children. At 63 and 61, respectively, they were tired in ways they had not been before, but they stepped up because that was what family did. Helping to raise their grandchildren through that difficult time brought Tom and Helena even closer together. They would lie in bed at night, exhausted from chasing toddlers and helping with homework, and hold each other close, drawing strength from their partnership. "We have been through everything together," Helena whispered one night, "and we have survived it all." "More than survived," Tom said. "We have thrived. Together, we can handle anything." And they did. They helped Henry through his grief and eventually supported him when he found love again with a widow named Mary, who brought her own 3 children to the family. They watched their grandchildren grow up and start having children of their own. They saw automobiles replace horses in town, though they still preferred the old ways on the ranch. They lived through a world war and the changes it brought to their community. Through it all, their love remained constant, the one thing that never changed or faltered. They had their routines, their private jokes, their ways of communicating without words. After so many years together, they could read each other perfectly, anticipating needs and moods with the ease of long practice. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1927, Tom was 75 and Helena was 73. They were both showing their age, moving carefully and tiring easily, but they were still sharp mentally and still deeply in love. Their family had grown so large that the celebration had to be held in the town hall in Grass Valley, and it seemed like half the county turned out to honor them. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren all gave speeches about what Tom and Helena meant to them, about the legacy of love and integrity they had built. Stories were told of Tom's fairness and hard work, of Helena's kindness and wisdom. But the story that resonated most was the story of how they had met, how Tom had seen a woman who deserved better and had given her a chance to have it. "They taught us that love is not just a feeling," Sarah said, her own hair now gray. "It is a choice you make every day, a commitment you renew with every action. They showed us that two people who come from difficult places can build something beautiful together if they are willing to work for it." Tom and Helena sat at the head table, holding hands as they had for 50 years, tears running down both their faces. Looking around at the room full of people who existed because they had found each other, because they had chosen love, was overwhelming in the best possible way. "We did good, did we not?" Tom whispered to Helena. "We did better than good," Helena said. "We did extraordinary." That night, back at the ranch, they sat on their porch under the stars as they had done thousands of times before. The ranch was quieter now, with Henry and Mary and their combined family living in a new house they had built nearby, but it was still home. "Do you ever think about how different your life would have been if I had never walked into that saloon?" Tom asked. "Never," Helena said firmly. "Because you did walk in. You saw me and you helped me and you loved me. That is my reality, and I refuse to imagine any other." "You changed my life just as much as I changed yours," Tom said. "I was going through the motions, building something but not really living. You taught me how to live, how to love, how to be part of something bigger than myself." They sat in silence for a while, comfortable with each other in the way only people who have spent a lifetime together can be. Finally, Tom spoke again. "I do not know how much time we have left, Helena. Could be years, could be less. But I want you to know that every single day with you has been a blessing. If I died tomorrow, I would die the happiest man who ever lived." "Do not talk about dying," Helena said, though she knew it was a reality they both had to face. "We have more living to do yet. More sunsets to watch, more grandchildren to spoil, more life to live together." "You are right," Tom agreed, "and I intend to spend every moment I have left loving you." They did have more time, as it turned out. Tom lived until 1932, making it to the remarkable age of 80. He died peacefully in his sleep one spring night, Helena beside him as she had been for 55 years. His last words to her were simple and perfect. "I love you, Helena. Always have, always will." Helena was devastated by his loss, but she was also grateful for the incredible life they had shared. She lived another 5 years, surrounded by the family they had created together, telling stories about Tom and the ranch and the love that had sustained her for more than half a century. When Helena died in 1937 at the age of 83, she was buried next to Tom on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as big and blue as the one they had admired together for so many years. Her last words, spoken to Sarah who sat with her at the end, were about Tom. "Tell him I am coming," she whispered. "Tell him I love him still." The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations who never forgot the story of Tom and Helena, the rancher and the saloon girl who had built something extraordinary out of love and faith and hard work. Their story became legend in Nevada County, told and retold as an example of what two people could accomplish when they believed in each other. But beyond the material legacy, beyond the ranch and the family and the success, what Tom and Helena really left behind was proof that transformation is possible, that love can heal old wounds, and that everyone deserves a chance at a different life. Tom had believed Helena deserved better, and that belief had changed both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. The saloon girl had wanted a different life, and one cowboy had believed she deserved it. Together, they had created not just a different life, but an extraordinary one, full of love and purpose and joy. They had proven that where you start does not determine where you end up, that second chances are real, and that love, real love built on respect and partnership and commitment, can overcome anything. Their great-great-grandchildren still live on the Ashford Ranch, still tell the story of Tom and Helena, still draw inspiration from two people who refuse to accept that their circumstances define their worth. And every evening, as the sun sets over the California hills, turning the sky orange and pink and purple, it is easy to imagine them still sitting on that porch together, holding hands and watching the day fade into night, their love eternal and unbreakable, a testament to the power of seeing someone for who they truly are and believing they deserve the very best life has to offer. The Lucky Dollar Saloon burned down in 1895, but nobody mourned its passing. By then, Helena was known throughout the county as Mrs. Ashford, a woman of substance and character, a devoted wife and mother and grandmother. The desperate girl who had poured drinks for men who did not see her had become a woman who was seen and valued and loved beyond measure. And it had all started with one man who looked past the rouge and the forced smile and saw a person who deserved a chance at something better, who deserved to be loved for exactly who she was. That chance, that love, had transformed two lives and created a legacy that would last for generations. A reminder that everyone deserves to be seen, to be valued, and to have the opportunity to become who they were always meant to be.